Okay, so here's our next problem. This plate rests in here with this old bearing, and this is what the clutch actuates against. The clutch lever goes here, and it turns the plate inside the case, and it'll press down on this. This larger plate is held in place by these two screws that, if you saw my earlier videos, I had to drill out, and they're totally gone. So the dilemma is, this is a K0 bike, and this thread pitch is a pre-ISO thread pitch. This thread pitch is not made anymore, or I can't find it. It is a 5mm by 0.9 thread, and the new standard is 5mm by 0.8 thread. So I didn't realize that at the time, and I ordered stainless steel 5mm by 0.8mm by 12mm long, and these will not work. They will not thread in. So after some research, I determined that I can buy American screws 1024, so that's the number 10 diameter, 24 threads per inch by 1/2 inch long, which is close to 12mm, and they are very close. And then I can buy a die that is 5mm by 0.9. They make them, even though you can't get the bolts. And then you can just hand thread one of these SAE screws through the die by hand with a screwdriver, like no big deal. So I did that. Here's the result. The threads look pretty good. They thread in nicely. I will show you. They are stainless steel. I ordered stainless steel, so all the hardware I'm putting on here is stainless steel. Sorry for the wiggle. Threads in great. So I'm going to go with this. More wiggle. I'll get better as we go. That's what we're going to do. This little bearing is a 6000 bearing. 6000. Let's see if you can get it. 6000. And now I've got a 6000 bearing here. This bearing, however, has seals in it. It's not entirely easy to get bearings that are open in the size you need. So this bearing has a seal in it. It's got a rubber seal and a rubber seal. It's the right size. It's my 6000 bearing, but it's got seals. Don't worry about it. Buy a bearing with seals, take a pick the seals out, and then you have an open bearing. Easy. Don't stress about it. That's what we're going to do. There you go. One seal pulled. How easy is it? Pick, seal, stick it in. Boom, seals out, open bearing. That's all it takes. All right. Gasket, new gasket. Old gasket. New gasket came in my kit. I'll show you the kit I bought for those who really want to see it. Bearing cover, clutch cover, bearing pushes right in, drops right on. 2 homemade screws. Okay, next question, torque spec. The service manual doesn't have a torque spec for almost anything. It has almost no torque spec, so I'm using a recommended torque based on the diameter of the bolt. My fastener supplier was Bolt Depot online. Here you go. So it's 7 Newton meters for a 5mm bolt. So that's what the screw is. That's what I'm going to go for on here. If you see me torquing them down, this is the torque specs I'm using depending on the diameter of the fastener. All right, attempt number 2. For those who didn't see this, I bought this holding bracket. I bought it off, I think, eBay. It slides over the clutch basket and then over the kickstart post to hold your clutch basket from turning. I did not have this when I did disassembly. I think it would have made my life a little bit easier. It has a bunch of other diameters for things. Some of these are for the stem bolts, and we'll see how they go as we move along. But I'm going to try this here to hold it while I torque, see if it works, and we'll try torque again. I know my big fat hand is in the way. There's a click. My big fat hand is still in the way. I'm having to hold pressure down on my torque wrench. There's my click. All right, so there we go. 7 Newton meters on those. That's all done. Good. All right, gasket set. So I got a Versa VG168. VG168. So far it's had everything. I'll let you know if it doesn't. It's a little bit funny the way they're packed. They're in here, and then there's a white piece of paper, and there's a couple gaskets under this white piece of paper for special protection, and I couldn't find them. So dig through the kit. There's a lot in here, and we'll see more as we go. Okay, we're going to keep working on the clutch actuator. Do a little oil. Not going to hurt. So this is an off-center cam, I guess, and this pin rides in that bearing. I'll drop that in the bearing, show you how that goes. So in its static position, it lines up in the center. Then what we have is we have this actuator lever. This is the gear shift that goes all the way through the engine to your left foot gear shift, and this drops in here and engages with this. So when you stomp on the gear shift, it turns and it cams this clutch out or applies pressure. And how does it do that? Well, it's got a 3-ball plate and a spring that rides on here. I think I have that right. It must have the circle here where it clears the clutch, this actuating lever. Okay, so can spin right in neutral. Then when you stomp on the pedal, this lever will move up or down, doesn't really matter. When it does, it will press against this, which is on the outside of the case, and it will press the clutch down, and that will disengage the clutch. So the clutch gets disengaged as you shift. It's an auto clutch. You don't have a separate clutch. As you shift with your foot, the clutch will disengage. So to do that, it needs to have something in the case that bears on it, and that's where your clutch adjustment is, and we'll show you that now. All right, so here's the outside of the case when it's going to go on. This is the adjuster. There's a lock nut and then a blade screwdriver screw. Inside the case is a plate that has 3 detents in it that match these 3 balls, right? So that's all simple. And so this plate can adjust in and out, depending on how you set this on the outside. Now, what's to keep this plate from just rotating? Well, there's a pin right here, and I'll disassemble this and show you what that looks like. All right, so if you loosen this lock nut on the clutch adjuster, well, you can take it all the way off. It doesn't really matter. Probably make our life a little easier for now. So what do we have under here? We got a nut, we got a washer, we got an O-ring. This O-ring I ordered separate. It was not in the gasket kit. So let's set those here. So now let's flip over and see what we've got. So this is the plate, the 3 tenths that ride on the ball. This is the screw, and it bears, this shoulder bears on the inside of the case. And this pin, this fixed pin, locates in that locating hole, and that keeps it from rotating. So when you adjust it, it can only go up and down. You can see how the screw drops down and the screw comes up. So if that's fixed against the shoulder, it will adjust this plate in or out in relation to the 3 balls on the top of the clutch basket. Hope that makes sense. So I'm gonna adjust it most of the way in for now. Drop it in so that locating pin lines up where I want it to, so it's fixed, it doesn't rotate. It has a cutout as well so that that clutch actuating lever doesn't interfere. So what would that look like? Well, you gotta realize that this is where the gear shift rod will ride. So this clutch actuating lever will sit right here. And so that it will swing a little bit like that. So you can see how they've cut this out to allow room for it to swing as you step on the clutch. So very little clearance for everything, but there's clearance. So let's put this together. We need our O-ring, so I guess we don't spill out a ton of oil, a washer, and then we'll just hand thread this on until we deal with our adjustment later. Done. All right, so we've got clutch base, 3 detents. We have the 3 balls. This half moon, this cutout needs to line up here. We have a little spring. We have our actuating lever, which, you know, I hope that's oriented right. Well, we're gonna find out. It seems to be fairly neutral right now. I think we'll give it a go. Now the case drops on top, but I'm not ready for that yet because I have to put a seal in right here for the Kickstarter. So let's do that. All right, back to clutch adjustment. So the O-ring under here, it is not in the kit. I will show you because I have it. This is the old O-ring. Old O-ring, new O-ring, Honda part number. There you go. Okay, now old kickstart seal, new kickstart seal, Honda part number. There you go. New kickstart seal. In case anybody wondered, this is an old plastic handle from a wood chisel. Just below the surface there. There we go. All right, last step before we close this up. Old oil screen. I suppose I could clean it, but on to part number, new oil screen. Don't know if there's an orientation. There's a little fin. Assume that's just to provide some form of sealing along the edges. There's just a big slot for this to go in, so I'm just going to press it in. The fins definitely press against the side, so regardless, nice and new and clean. All right, so we're good. Clutch is in, clutch plates are in, this big drive gear is in, the oil pump is in. We are ready to close this case up, and that's what we're going to do. Kickstarter, then it's got to line up the shift lever in here, and all that clutch has to sort of marry up correctly. It is definitely bearing on something, but I can't quite. Oop, there we go. Still have more rotation than I think. Let's give it a tappy tap. It is open on this side and more closed on this side, which is concerning and seems to have a lot of movement. I'm wondering if I don't have this adjusted out far enough. So let's separate it again and try to back that out as far as possible. So I lifted it off. Everything is still in place as I would want it. So I'm not concerned about any of that. So I'm going to try to back off this as much as I can, which means I loosen the adjuster nut, and I tighten this screw, which will draw the clutch adjuster closer to the case. So that's what I have done. Try a little bit more. That's not going anymore, so it's bottomed out. And that means the shoulder is touching the case as much as possible. So that's it. The only three things that touch in here once this goes is the gear shift, the kickstart lever, kickstart rod, the end of the gear shift rod, that's its bearing point, just machined into the case, and then this clutch actuator adjuster. You know what? I'm missing a gasket. I bet a gasket goes in here. There you go. Gasket. It's from that Versa kit. Everything lines up nice. Interestingly, it closes up the oil screen. That seals it completely. You have oil passage here from the clutch side into the main case. I guess another pass through there, and the rest are all the bolt locations. Okay. Good catch. Alright, now we're going to get the bolts and we're going to snug it down. So again, Bolt Depot hardware, there are different lengths here, so I will have to sort that out and I will let you know. Okay, hardware. All of them are hex head, cap screws, stainless steel. This one here is 45 millimeters long, 6 millimeter by 45 millimeter. This one over here you can't see behind the kickstart lever is also 45 millimeters long. All the rest, it appears 25 millimeters works. And that's what we're going to go with for now, and I'll see how they tighten down.